Welcome to Scanner School. We teach you everything to know about the scanner radio hobby. Today's podcast is all about the new Face of Uniden. That's right. But before we begin, I want to remind you that today's podcast is sponsored by our brand new webinar. Pretty ironic, we're talking about Uniden here, but the new webinar is all about software-defined radios. Why every scanner user needs an SDR, the number one underrated tool that should be in your setup. This live, free webinar will be held on February 23rd, 2021 at 8 p.m. Eastern U.S. time. Virtual seats are still limited, and you can sign up at scannerschool.com/webinar. If you're listening after the webinar date, you can use the same link to catch the replay. All notes from today's podcast we found on our website at scannerschool.com/session166. Before we start this week's podcast, I'd like to take a moment to thank our Patreon supporters. Patreon is a month-to-month sponsorship platform. We have 3 different support tiers, each with different benefits. But the most valuable tier is our $5 a month tier. This equates to sponsoring the podcast for about $1 per episode. Now, not only do our $5 Patreon supporters receive the podcast early, but they also receive a commercial-free version of the podcast delivered directly to their podcast player. Some may say that the included squelchy sticker pack that is mailed to your home is the best benefit of the $5 level, but I think it's the community or the club that is growing at this level. You see, we meet once a month on Zoom, and we have a roundtable discussion about scanning, ask questions, offer advice. Some of the members are answering other people's questions, and we just talk with our fellow Scanner School classmates. This is an exclusive group for our $5 Patreon members. Now, again, if all this wasn't enough at that level, you'll also receive discounts to upcoming Scanner School courses and offerings. Now, you can help support Scanner School by going to www.scannerschool.com/Patreon or www.scannerschool.com/support. Now, I'd like to thank all of our Patreon supporters at all levels, and they are Blurpy Benner, Brian King, Buzz Gold, Chris Paris, Craig Harper, Dan, Denny Crotty, Ed Walsh, Eddie K, Edward Bramlett, Guy Lee, James Felling, James Peruta, Jeff Block, Jenny Taylor, Jim Heinrich, John Goldenberg, Ken Newberry, Kevin Zwicky, Lenny Bauer, Les Stevenson, Mark Beebe, Mason Kramer, Michael Kroger, Paul Teal, Raymond Hill, Richard Armstrong, Robert Kanzler, Ronnie Bach, Sal Marandola, Tim Mazza, Todd Glendy, William Arcan. Now let's start the podcast.
Welcome to The Scanner School, a podcast dedicated to the scanner radio hobby. Class is about to begin. Here is your host, Phil Lichtenberger.
Welcome to Scanner School. This podcast is here to teach you everything to know about the scanner radio hobby. My name is Phil Lichtenberger, and my amateur radio call sign is W2LIE. Now, again, today's podcast is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. I want to thank you all for your continued support, and also by my online company, East Coast Pagers, your emergency alerting specialist, eastcoastpagers.com. If this is your first week joining us for class or a weekly listener, welcome back to this week's podcast. So, fresh off the presses, more or less, there is a new face of Uniden, and he's got some big shoes to fill. Joe Bearcat is his name, and he is Uniden's new public-facing representative who has stepped in to replace Paul Opitz after Paul's passing last year, 2 years ago at this point. So Joe announced his new position as the official Uniden representative and Uniden scanner product manager on Radio Reference on January 22nd, 2021, which quickly excited and quieted anybody who was worried about the future of Uniden in the scanner radio hobby. You see, because there's been a quiet period since Paul's passing and no more firmware updates or anything like that happening, people were starting to get a little bit worried about what the future of the scanner radio hobby would bring. Now, again, you know my perspective on this, and you know how I believe that software-defined radios is where the hobby is going, which again is why I'm having my webinar this month. Again, scannerschool.com/webinar is a shameless plug there. But I think we're going to see a third party come into play somewhere. I've seen a lot of exciting development. Some of it has been open source. Some of it's been private. Some of it falls into a hardware. And if you follow my Twitter feed, you'll see I've been retweeting a lot of stuff lately that has kind of been falling in line with those things because, again, it's pretty exciting. And, again, I am not discounting anything that's happening on Whistler or Uniden. I think they will both remain strong players in the scanner radio hobby. It's just I feel that with the way that SDR is maturing, I think we're going to see some explosions in that field. And I'll still buy the hardware, though. Don't get me wrong. I'm still going to buy scanner radio hardware. That hasn't stopped that process at all. Trust me. And again, I've got a pile of reviews here. I've actually got a couple shipments here, and we'll be going through that. But again, let's go back. Let's back up again. Let's talk about what's going on here on the podcast before I go off on another tangent here. So, Joe Bearcat is his name. And again, he's done a great job at putting out some of the fires and some of the worries that some of the scanner radio users have expressed over the last couple of months to about the last year or so. So Joe's background is in scanning, and he has a professional career in the two-way world, which means Joe has a strong knowledge on how radios and systems work, right? His background is in the RF field, so he knows how things are designed and how scanners need to operate on some of these systems. So if you're unaware of Paul's history and Paul's passing, let me bring you up to speed. In fact, I've got an entire podcast episode just memorializing Paul's dedication and his contributions to the scanner radio hobby. If you'd like to check out that podcast, I believe it's scannerschool.com/session108. Again, you can go through the back catalogs in your podcast player and look for session 108. But that was a quick, less than 15-minute podcast episode that kind of just went through who Paul was, what he did, and just memorializing the legacy that Paul left behind. So let's summarize that episode really quickly so that we can go into what Joe's going to bring to the table here and what the size of the shoes are that Joe needs to fill here. So Rodney Paul Upman Opitz was better known online as Upman, right? And again, what I assume here is that it was for Uniden Product Manager was the acronym here, right? Upman, Uniden Product Manager. Again, I'm assuming that, but it makes perfect sense to me, so that's where I'm sticking to on this one. But again, Paul was the product manager and director of Uniden America in the scanner radio market. He's instrumental in guiding Uniden through the scanner radio product. A lot of Paul's ideas and design are on our shelves today on a lot of the scanner radios that we own and use. I mean, these are all part of Paul's ideas, and even what could have happened to radios like the SDS 100 and 200. It was a whole roadmap, and Paul knew where he wanted these scanners to go. Hopefully, he left some notes behind, but again, this is everything we use today. You know, we can thank Paul for all of this kind of stuff. Now, Paul was very active in the radio reference forums, and that was very important to a lot of us, right? He was the company's face in the scanner radio hobby. Paul would be on Radio Reference. He would answer questions. He would give help. I even had Paul show up to a couple of my live YouTube sessions, which was, for me, was amazing just to see that he was there and watching what I was doing. That's how involved Paul was with the scanner radio hobby and how serious he took his position with Uniden and product support and everything that came along with that. So it allowed us, the scanner radio user, to actually give direct feedback to Uniden, to have somebody at Uniden to get help from without calling the 800 number. I mean, again, this is all done through a website, and it was all done through radio reference forums, and it wasn't you expected to get an answer from him, but it was really cool when you did get an answer from him and you got direct help. And again, it really helped build that bridge between Uniden and their customers, which is us, right? So as a purchaser, right, as somebody who is buying this product, I feel very comfortable knowing that there is a contact in our world, right, in the Radio Reference forums that's there to help us, to be there, and to listen to us. And again, those are some huge shoes, or it's part of the huge shoes that Paul left behind. So again, for those who don't know, Paul did pass December 28th, 2019, after quite a bit of a battle with cancer, and it was a very public battle. He did post his updates. He had his own blog, and it was very hard to see what he was going through. Everybody was pulling for Paul and hoping that he would make it, and unfortunately, that just wasn't the case here. But Paul started again with Uniden. He had a history before that. He worked for Radio Shack, and he was part of their team, the development team. But he moved over to Uniden in 2003. In 2010, Paul became the senior project manager over at Uniden, and in 2013 and until his passing in 2019, Paul was the director of marketing and product development over at Uniden. So again, as we touched on a little bit earlier, Paul was pretty much responsible for the design and the functionality of the scanners that were making their way into the consumer market, right? So from the home patrol model and putting an interface together that would allow somebody to pretty much take a scanner out of a box, pop in their zip code, and be scanning was something that was revolutionary when it came out, right? And again, we're talking about, at this point, it's been out for a while. It's been out for over 10 years with the initial Home Patrol 1. But it's something that's like, it was brand new, right? I mean, the ability to take everything in the radio reference database and put it into a scanner that you can comb through and use software that all of a sudden now you didn't need to have an understanding or a knowledge on how scanning programming had to work, right? This allowed more people to get into the hobby. This allowed people who just didn't understand how things worked and just wanted a scanner to work out of the box to be able to do that. Now, of course, with every pro, there's a con, and a lot of us who are in the scanner radio hobby and wanted more control over our scanners began to quickly see the limitations that were there for the Home Patrol environment. Again, great product at what it does, gets new people or those who don't understand how scanning works into scanning. But again, for those of us who want more control, it was limiting. Our feedback was heard, and I understand our feedback was heard because we've got radios now like the BCD 436 HP and the 536 HP, which kind of married the Home Patrol world with the legacy type of scanners where you've got keypads and direct key entry and more of a scanner interface that we're used to, but it still has that whole back end of the Home Patrol environment. And that all carries over again into the SDS 100 and the SDS 200, right? It just builds on that 436, 536. And again, what do we say about software-defined radios? Yes, you'll find software-defined radios under the hood in the design of the SDS 100 and the SDS 200. Remember, I said that I thought software-defined radios was the future of scanning, and it's not going to stop us from buying hardware from manufacturers because a lot of these manufacturers are, what? Putting SDRs inside their radios. So what else did we see under Paul's management? We saw radios that would start to include new technologies such as DMR and NXDN and Pro Voice, right? These were digital modulations that were unavailable to us prior, right? When we had just the Trunk Tracker 3 and the Trunk Tracker 4 and even Trunk Tracker 5s, right? Now that we have like the Trunk Tracker X, because it all depends how many levels you're going to add to it. We also have some radios that make us scratch our head, like the SR30C, but we've also got the BC125AT, great radio, the BC346 XT and the XTC, the 325, the 996, the 396, the BCT15s, the 895s, 98s, right? These radios are very, very cool, unique in their own ways, and there's a piece of Paul in each one of these scanners. So on the other side of the break, let's talk about Joe, what he's doing right now in this short time he's already put these shoes on, and what we think is going to happen to the future of Uniden. And I'm really excited to see what's to come. So I'll be right back after this break. Did you know there are ways to help support the Scanner School podcast that doesn't take any time or any extra money on your part? If you go to scannerschool.com/support, you will find we have several ways that you can continue to do your online shopping and help support us. We have links to Amazon. If you click on our link before you go to Amazon, anything you buy from there will help support Scanner School. Now, if you're in the market for a brand new scanner, an antenna, other accessories, we have links to Scanner Master, where you can not only purchase a scanner and accessories, but you can also get your radio programmed. And by clicking on our link before you buy, you are helping to support the podcast. Now, if you're in the market for software, we have links to Butel. And if you want something new to you, we also have links to eBay. Again, just go to scannerschool.com/support before you make your purchases, and you are helping to support Scanner School at no additional cost to you. This session of Scanner School is sponsored by East Coast Pagers. Now, East Coast Pagers is one of my online companies, and we are a Unication, Apollo, and Swiss phone dealers serving the North American market. Now, if you're looking for a personal use pager or one for your department, we can get you a quote at the very best prices. So why does a company like East Coast Pagers support Scanner School? I think that every scanner radio user should at least put one pager in their collection of radios. The reason why is very simple. It frees up your scanner to just do scanning, and then you have one radio that's dedicated to your local fire activity. Now, with a pager, you can have voice storage. You can do tone outs. You can keep it silent. You can go back the next day and listen to what you've missed overnight. It's more than you can do with an out-of-the-box scanner. And with today's pagers having multiple frequencies and even having multiple channels in a scan list, like the Unication G1 can do 8 channels in a scan list. It has 64 memory channels, and out of the box, it comes with 11 minutes of stored voice and a desktop charger. The G2s to G5s, they do P25 Phase 1 and Phase 2 in simulcast environments with stored voice, paging on conventional and P25. Oh, and they're upgradable too to DMR Type 1 and Type 2. They are more rugged than today's consumer-based scanners. And with a pager like a Swiss phone S-Quad, you won't even realize you're wearing one. It'll help keep you informed as to what's going on in your neighborhood. So again, eastcoastpagers.com or contact me directly, phil@eastcoastpagers.com. Do you have a new scanner? You're having problems understanding how it works? Maybe you're new to the entire Home Patrol database of programming and you can't figure out Sentinel. Did you get a new SDR and you're trying to figure out how to install it? Or you want to learn how to use Unitrunker, DSD Plus, maybe set up a PieAware, or even just make some changes and you don't understand how the system and the equipment works? The podcast might be great for you, but maybe you need a little bit more of one-on-one help with setting something up. I'm available to do just that with you with our private tutoring sessions. You can book me online by going to scannerschool.com/consulting for a 1-hour session. And it's great because we can actually share computer screens remotely, and I can guide you through step by step as if I was sitting right next to you. So again, book me for an hour at scannerschool.com/consulting for your scanner radio one-on-one tutoring session. National Communications Magazine is your personal library of scanner, CB, GMRS, FRS, MURS, and two-way radio articles written by the best minds in the business over the past 3 decades. Your NatCom personal online access account allows you to download the newest issues of America's Hobby Radio magazine, as well as back issues too. So visit natcommag.com to download your free sample issues and sign up today. That's natcommag.com for National Communications Magazine. Okay, so on this half of the podcast, we're going to talk about the future of Uniden and what is to come from my perspective. And I'm only going off about what we see online. I'm speculating a lot here, okay? That's my disclaimer. Until we hear directly from Joe Bearcat what is going on here. And again, I'd love to have Joe on the podcast. I've already reached out to him, and we'll be reaching out to him again in the future once he settles into his new role. Understandably, things are very crazy for him because he's just walking into a new position here. So let me, in the meantime, though, read to you Joe Bearcat's very first initial post on Radio Reference that he made to introduce himself. And I quote, and again, I'll put a link to this in the session notes. "This is Joe Bearcat, or JB for short, if you like. First, I want to apologize for the absence of Uniden in the RadioReference.com forums. Upman's passing hit us all hard and by surprise. And shortly after that hit the global pandemic threw everyone into various stages of isolation. So this delayed the replacement process. That difficulty remains throughout this day. But Uniden has never abandoned the valued customer base that exists, and we have been working behind the scenes to come up with a solution to fill the void left by Upman's sudden passing. A few issues have come up which needed to be addressed, and those will be addressed in the appropriate forums. These are largely cosmetic and are being worked on. We will also have some firmware updates for current models in the coming months, and in parentheses he writes, give or take depending on QC approval. Nothing major is planned initially, just squashing some bugs. I will be assuming some of the duties that Upman performed with respect to online forums. This includes acting as a liaison between forum users and Uniden for issues involving Uniden scanners. Such issues include bug reports and to some degree feature requests. While I can pass such requests along to Uniden, there is no guarantee any particular features will be included in current or future model scanners. Joe Bearcat is an online persona and not my real name, just as Upman was not Paul Opitz's real name. I like to keep my personal and professional life separate. I've heard through stories from Upman to believe this is my best interest. While I have not officially worked under Upman, except under one recent project as a consultant, I did provide input to him on scanner matters and ideas, and had the pleasure to meet him in person a few times. His shoes are so big, I do not believe any one person can fill them adequately, and his passing still saddens me to this day. I'm sure I'm not alone. All I can do is strive to perform the duties I will be taking on as well as he did. That said, I'm human, and I will surely make mistakes, but I promise to my best to fill the part of those shoes with honor. Just to give a little bit of my background experience, I have primarily worked in two-way radio nearly all of my professional life, and I've owned and used scanners since the 70s. I've also designed a replacement control system for a Motorola radio as a hobby. That never developed into a commercial product, but it was all ready. Maybe someday I'll explain what happened. So I am familiar with the radio scanner design and control. I own several scanner brands and models, as I'm a big fan of all scanners. In fact, there are a few brands I do not own. My focus will be on Uniden models. That does not mean I only like Uniden scanners, but I have to stay focused on the reason I am on the forums. I'm not entirely certain at this point what forums I will be active on, but it's a foregone conclusion that radioreference.com will be my primary forum. Some of Uniden scanner email lists, especially the current models, regional scanner club email lists, and other forums are also entirely likely. It will be a work in progress. Like Upman, I cannot guarantee a reply to every email or message received, but I can try to read as many as I can. I will try to adhere to the excellent code of conduct established by Upman. My email might be announced when it's finalized. Addendum, it's up and set up now. But I may decide to leave it largely unpublished, as online forum contacts benefits many who may have the same questions. There may be times when an email contact is required, and that will be available. Please bear with me as I get us up to speed to a level of service Upman provided as I try to review the forums for pending issues and get more familiar with the duties I have assumed, including updating the T-Wiki, which was just a duty added tonight. Again, there are really big shoes to fill. Initially, I would like to focus on specific support issues, bugs, and suspected bugs, but please let me review these things before hitting me with new ones or with feature requests or ask me the next model will be released. At this point, I do not know. There has been one model released in the last year, the Uniden SR30C. We are fortunate that Upman was able to release the SDS series before his passing, and we are aware he had a roadmap for many additional features of that series. We are still researching to see what was documented. Still, development of new models continues. An obvious question might be if I'm related to Betty Bearcat, who promoted Bearcat products in the 70s. Well, we had to leave some mystery, right? I miss her too, but not as much as Paul. Signed, Joe Bearcat, official Uniden representative, Uniden Scanner Product Manager. Now, after this post, Joe immediately jumped into the Radio Reference forums and started to look for any questions in the Uniden Tech forum that he could find and answer quickly. it's that action that, first of all, as somebody who is doing something new, it's exciting and you want to do the best you can and you're excited to do it. And I understand it's going to quickly wear on him and start to feel like it's a lot of work and it's an ever-growing pile that you're never going to be able to dig out of, right? So Joe is trying and he's working. And again, like he says, he's not going to be able to answer every question or every forum post. But again, he's there. That bridges the gap. That gives somebody online within Uniden an ear, right? That we can speak to and maybe get some feedback also. But what's really interesting is that Joe put out a post on Radio Reference not too long ago asking for feedback on a potential future product. I've never seen this before from Uniden. And it went along the lines of, hey guys, would you be interested in a scanner that did digital but not trunking? Now, again, this brought up a whole bunch of comments, especially one from me. And my first initial comment was, well, how many systems are out there like that, right? How many frequencies are out there in the radio reference database that are just digital and are not trunking? And do you think there would be a benefit of that? My other feedback to Joe at that point too, which was echoed by many others, is, well, what about a replacement for the BC346 XTC? Being that you go from the 125 at $100 and change straight into a 325, which is over 350, right? There's no middle ground. There's nothing in the middle there. Would this kind of radio allow somebody to jump into the middle? For example, too, I have purchased an Alinco product that allows me to monitor DMR Tier 1 and Tier 2 for about $150. It's a ham radio. It's not a scanner, but still, it got me in there. SDRs can get me in there for less than $100 if you use the right software, right? So there's options. Do they need to be a scanner? Do we want a scanner that just does digital and no trunking? How much additional would it cost to add the trunking? And then that opened up a whole other can of worms too, because would Uniden now, again, I'm speculating here and I'm kind of just talking off the cuff, but is this a new model now, right? Is this a new marketing model? Now, this has worked well for two-way manufacturers for a long time. You know, Motorola, Kenwood, JVC. You buy the base model. I mean, it works for cars, right? You buy the base model, and then you start adding the features you want to it. So are we going to have one scanner model? And then if you want digital, you buy the software key that opens up digital. And if you need trunking, you buy the software key that enables trunking. And if you need, when I say digital, I mean P25. But if you need DMR, and need NXDN, and need Pro Voice, you keep buying these modules then. And what starts out as a radio that's, I don't know, $200 quickly ends up being the same price as an SDS 200 by the time you add in all of the bells and whistles. Now, again, we've seen this model from Uniden with the Home Patrol 1 and the Home Patrol 2, where out of the box, it's usable, but you can add the Extreme Update, which gives you more information that's available to you. And with scanners like the Trunk Tracker X's, right, the P2 models, you can add in DMR, NXDN, and Pro Voice at $60 a pop, right? So we're starting to see that path from Uniden. Does that mean that Uniden is going to go that way? I don't know. I'm not part of that, but it is very interesting to see, though, at least via Joe's posting online, that there is some forward momentum with Uniden. They are working on a new product, and we have seen that now. As far as an idea, right? We know the idea is there. We've seen the idea. They're looking for validation on this idea, which is, again, really cool from a perspective of the company. I mean, I know I've done the same thing as well, where you put your feelers out there, you see there's a demand for the product, and if there is a demand, then you move forward with it, right? So maybe we'll see something in a year or two from Uniden. Will that replace a current model? Who knows? But it's great to see that things are now going in a forward direction over at Uniden. So whatever the answer is to all this, I'm happy to see that somebody is now the successor to Paul over at Uniden. I do wish Joe Bearcat the best of luck in his new role. I hope that him and I can form a good relationship. I hope that he continues to be as active on Radio Reference as he's been active in this short time frame. Joe, if you're listening to this podcast and you ever want to be a guest on here, the door is always open. Just let me know. And if anybody else wants to be a guest on the podcast, please, scannerschool.com/guest, I believe, is the URL for that. Love to have you on here and share your story and some background, and also maybe even a sneak peek in some upcoming Uniden products, maybe. All right. Well, how did we do this week? You can download the notes from today's podcast at scannerschool.com/session 166. Remember to go to scannerschool.com/Zello to find out about our weekly Scanner Radio Net. Also, please be sure you're subscribed to this podcast by hitting the subscribe button on your podcast player of choice, or by signing up for our newsletter on the front page of our website. Or you can even subscribe to this podcast now over on our YouTube channel. And of course, if you like this podcast, please share it with somebody that you know in the Scanner Radio hobby. That's the fastest way to help us grow, and also for us to help more people with the Scanner Radio hobby. After all, that is our mission, is to help as many people as we can with the Scanner Radio hobby. And also, don't forget to subscribe and sign up for our brand new webinar all about software-defined radios over at scannerschool.com/webinar. All right, my name is Phil Lichtenberger, and again, this is Scanner School. We teach you everything to know about the Scanner Radio hobby. We'll catch you all again next week. 73.